Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
Do you think that's a positive or a negative for Jeff when we play that?
Oh, he loves it. I mean, you know, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right?
And I gave his, I'm promoting his radio station. See, hold on a minute. Once again, I talk about this all the time. I think I'm the only guy, you even said this to me when you used to listen to me on Westplex 107.1. I'm the only guy that mentions other radio stations because, once again, I see one of the things that used to drive me nuts in the media business was, and I remember back in the day when I was working at the original KSOK or whatever, and we would do fundraisers, and we would bust our butt to make money for whatever the fund was, multiple sclerosis, multiple muscular dystrophy. Back in the day, the Judavine Center, which was way ahead of the curve as far as autism. I mean, we were raising money for autism back in the 70s and 80s when nobody knew what autism was. Anyway, there would be like a big event we'd put on, and the local TV station would say, and a local radio station put on I'm going like, dude, come on, because they don't want to give away any free publicity. But that would be like me saying, the reverse would be like a local TV station, that we won't mention the call letters of,
It's super petty, and it's the old crabs in a barrel thing. And, I told you this before. I loved Rush Limbaugh used to say this. People just think that life is a pizza, and if I get too big of a slice, you're going to be left trying to eat the box.
I'm telling you, and that's the way it is in the radio business because everybody – see, once again, I watch all these YouTubers, and the big thing is collaboration. You take a vertical, so to speak, a vertical in video. I watch all these guys rebuild cars and stuff like that, and they're always in every other guy's video, and they cross-promote, and I'm thinking to myself, man, those guys get it. They really get it because they understand that as the tide rises, so do all boats. Okay, a couple things to talk about. You mentioned Brad Young. What bothers me, and this is my personal pet peeve, and Brad Young filled in for and Brad Young's an attorney, and Brad fills in for Mark Reardon from time to time in 97.1. And Brad highlighted, he's got to be a good guy because he's a Brad. There are not a lot of Brads in the world.
I agree.
The Brads are all great guys. He has the same thing that ticks him off about Biden that I do. When he goes into, we got to have these rich people pay their fair share. The fair share thing, okay? He had the statistics, and I wish I could find out what his source was. But have you ever heard these statistics about the percentage of people and how much of percentage of the...
Yeah, in fact, you've talked about it here on bjshow.co before.
I think he said the top 1% of the individual earners, we're not talking corporations, we're talking people, top 1% of personal income. So they're making, I think he said that puts them in the $500,000 a year or some, I can't remember what it was. It was a lot of money. But the top 1% of the earners in the United States pay like 42% of the total income tax burden. And the top 5% pay 65% of the top income. Now, this comes on the fact that Biden's trying to throw a new crazy thing into the tax code. And part of what they're trying to do is, and you're a financial guy, you know what I'm talking about. They're trying to assess taxes on unrealized income. Okay, now you're going to say, okay, what's unrealized income? Unrealized income is, let's say this happens with a lot of people in their house. Let's say you got married 30 years ago and you bought a house and you paid $150,000 for the house. Well, the house is now worth, and depending on where neighborhood it could be $500,000. It could be $1 million. In North County, it could be $25,000, right, John?
Yeah, absolutely right.
Right. So let's say your house is now worth, let's say for the sake of argument, you bought well, and there's certain areas of the St. Louis area, for example, Kirkwood is a hot spot. You bought a house for $150,000 30 years ago, and now it's worth $1 million, and he wants to come in and say, we're going to tax you on your basis, which is what you bought the property for, $150,000, and what it's worth today. And I'm going like, no, hold on a minute now.
Right.
I'm already paying personal property tax, our real estate taxes on the house, and I have not realized the gain. So how are you going to do that? I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's a creative way. It's a creative way to punish people who've generated any kind of wealth.
And
what more can you do to stifle people who invest or who try to bet? You talked about this yesterday on the show, Brad. It's tantamount to the Urban League saying we're doing too much for students who are doing well. We need to do more for the lowest common denominator.
Okay, let's jump to that real quick. I sent that to a couple of my teacher friends. And I've got one teacher friend, if I say the sky's green, she'll text me back and she'll say, no, the sky's red. I mean, anything I say, she's going to disagree with, okay? Yeah. She actually agreed with me yesterday because I quoted the urban, if you don't know what we're talking about, after this horrendous thing happened Friday, the beatdown of this poor young girl up in North County, right down, matter of fact, on my old street where I grew up, Claudine up in North County. The Channel 5 reporter goes and interviews the Urban League guy. Why he interviewed the Urban League guy, I don't quite understand. Don't you think he would probably try to get a district administrator or somebody like that? But maybe they're all hunkered down. They're not going to talk. So he interviews this Urban League guy, and the dude says the problem with our educational system is we pay too much attention to honor roll students. And
Yeah.
I'm going, what? What did he say? So in other words, we're supposed to say, to hell with these kids who are smart and doing well and putting themselves, putting their efforts into school. Screw them.
That's exactly right.
We need to pay attention to all the miscreants or, the guys who were, guys and gals. In this case, it was a woman who beat the crap out of that other woman.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, I couldn't believe what he said. And he goes into this gobbledygook about we need counseling and blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something. In my life, with my father, a World War II vet, if I'd gotten in trouble like that kind of stuff, my dad would take me aside and probably, my dad was not a violent man, but I would not be comfortable in the situation with my father. And
let me interrupt, Brad. I was watching Stephanie Bell's show yesterday at Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Scott Fawn was on in the morning, and you can watch that show on YouTube as well. They're on right now. But Scott was on yesterday, and Scott's comments about the Hazelwood East situation, he said if he had done something like that at school, he said he would have gotten the belt at home. And Scott said, you're not supposed to say that these days. But I mean, Brad, I can't imagine. And here's a rare personal anecdote from me. My dad was a firefighter. And when my mom would say, I'm going to call Dad, and Dad's going to come home from the firehouse. And every once in a while, she'd get Dad on the phone, and Dad would say, if I have to leave the firehouse and come home. And you know what? Young John Combest started acting right away.
Well, but see, once again, to a certain extent, my mom would do that sometimes as well too.
Yeah.
And once again, I look back on this. I've got 4 kids, okay, and I by far have not been the best father. There are a lot of things I look back and I think to myself, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. But I never, if my kids got in trouble like this, I would never let them get away with this kind of stuff. My oldest son. Can
you imagine coming home if you had done half that?
Well, I just don't understand the whole thing. And then I think it's in itself tells a lot about the whole situation. And then, the thing that you came out was, what's her name again? We need to get her on the air. Angelina, what is her name? The lady who says we should fire the mayor of Hazelwood.
Valentina Gomez. She wants Matt. I sent that, by the way. I sent our show to a few friends who grew up in Spanish Lake and actually moved to Hazelwood. Now, of course, they're out in Wentzville. But they were like, wait a minute. First of all, is Matt Robinson even the mayor of Hazelwood anymore? And he is. But talk about not getting your geography right, Brad. But go ahead. Yes, Valentina Gomez.
But once again, let's put that in a different concept. Let's say there's a terrible thing that happens at a school in the city of St. Louis. Is Mayor Tashara Jones going to resign? No, because of the fact that she's not the school board president. She's not the superintendent.
But it doesn't matter. It's adding another name and another action item too.
I don't understand it. Don't understand it. Okay. We talked about the Biden budget. You were gonna talk more about that. Last break.
Yeah. Well, just mostly the immigration thing. So, I mean, we're going to obviously hear about immigration every day on the campaign trail. Democrats don't want to talk about it. Democrats say that they had a reasonable proposal, and if it wasn't for the Republicans, we would still have this.
Okay, but
we would have a border fix if it wasn't for the Republicans.
Okay, I'm gonna play Brad, amateur campaign advisor. Okay, if I were Joe Biden's campaign advisor, I'd say, Joe, you want to get reelected president? Here's what you do. You wake up tomorrow morning and you go like, boy, you know what? I've heard so much about the situation with the border. I am personally going to go down on the border, and I'm not coming back until this thing's taken care of. You know, you talk about the fact that I'm going down there, and I'm going to walk that border with the Border Patrol agents every day. I'm going to, and you think I'm not paying attention to everything. Remember, wherever I'm at, I got my phone, and I got all the, accoutrements of being the president. Just like when I go to Delaware, they always talk about, they always talk about when he goes to Delaware, he can't do his job, and Corrine comes out and says, well, he can do anything at the White House. He can do everything he can do at the White House. He can do in his plane or his car or whatever like that. I would go and I would walk that border every damn day, and I'd be slapping those
out of the hand of Republicans.
Right, I'd be slapping the backs of those Border Patrol guys. Hey, dude, I got your back. Literally, I got your back. And can you imagine a picture of him like where let's say there was a hole in the fence and Joe scuffles over there and grabs a guy and throws him back into Mexico. People go, yeah, Joe Biden, he's my guy.
Yeah, he's our guy. And you know what? Then we don't have that issue anymore.
Right. And the Republicans are like, well, what do we talk about now? Right?
Yeah, absolutely right.
I mean, I don't get it. And once again, the problem with it is he created the problem. Now he's like blame it on the Republicans.
Yeah, but maybe at a certain point and to counter what you said, Brad, maybe at a certain point you just become so committed to the narrative that these are not illegal immigrants. They are newcomers who are looking to improve their life, Brad. And the least we can do as a civilized country is welcome them in and give them at least a basic building block of a head start.
Well, you know what? And there's the controversy about he got goaded into calling the illegals in the State of the Union address last week. Who's that MTG that says say her name or whatever that is. So now he's backpedaling on the illegal thing. Okay, so you and I kidded about this when we used to run Neil Bortz 2 O's, Neil Bortz with 2 O's. When we were doing Neil Bortz on my other station, Crap, which was the talk station. He used to have this dictionary on his website, and there was a couple of interesting things there. He's talking about AMF. Do you know what fun bags are?
Wow, did you just say that on the air?
Yes, he used to talk about that all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
that was on
we are a show called the BJ Show.
That was on his that was on his dictionary of terms and stuff like that. We need to start putting together on dictionary. So what do we call the immigrants? We can't call them illegal immigrants, and now they're being referred to as newcomers.
They're newcomers,
but we have to have the Brad and John show. So I had a couple ideas, like we call them border jockeys. You like that?
Oh yeah. I mean these are, boy, you're heading straight for the jugular, Brad. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Or we could call them border hoppers.
Border hoppers is good. Yeah. Or maybe one too many syllable. I mean, border jockeys is. Woof.
Then that way they'd be BJ, right? Just like us. Brad
and John, BJ. Nice. I do like that.
Hey, you BJs out there, you jumping up those borders. This is Brad and John.
When we get a sponsor to pay for our trip down there, Brad, it can be BJ versus BJ.
Right.
Like, 3 people, it's a 3-way dance, me and you versus any given illegal hop in the border.
Well, see, because of the fact that, John, what's interesting is you say things sometimes that come out of your mouth, and I think to myself, man, this guy is good, because you come up with these. You said one earlier this morning I should have written down, and I'm going like, this is like corporate speak stuff, and that's what you used to do, right?
Yeah. Did I say something profound? Because that would be the first time probably
No.
74 shows.
You say things like, for example, I'd never heard the term meat shield, okay? To me, it's I'd never heard that before, okay? But once again, it's to the point where I'm in love with the Urban Dictionary because of the fact that there's so many things I hear, and to the point I'm going like, okay, what is that? That kind of stuff. And what's interesting about it is, even with the Urban Dictionary, you take a term or a word or something like that, sometimes there's like 10 different definitions. And I'm going like,
yeah. And there's a lot of it, which it's kind of funny. You get the feeling that sometimes a guy and some of his friends will say, hey, let's see if we can get this on the Urban Dictionary. So it could be just like, maybe it could just be a micro group with a microaggression that really wanted something to go into the But it's a lag. You and I talked about this before. Urban Dictionary is a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
Like they didn't have POG up for like a year, Brad.
Right. And it's not until things get sort of interesting. Well, essentially, it's I don't know if the term crowdsourcing, but it's people who go in there and put it up. And if nobody goes in there and puts up the term, then essentially it becomes undefined.
That's right. It's the old Facebook concept.
Right.
Can you get people to create their own content? Brad, what we haven't talked about, speaking of good old Joey Biden, is the idea of a TikTok ban, Brad. What do you think about this?
I tell you what, let's do that next break because that takes a little bit more time. But let me delve into something right here. House Bill 2412. Okay, you know what House Bill 2412 is?
I don't.
It has not passed. Essentially, it would make 5 different plants illegal to be sold in the state of Missouri.
Oh, okay.
Now we're not talking.
Do
marijuana.
I get to guess what they are?
Yeah, go ahead.
Or do any of them involve cannabis?
No. These are like things that might be like literally in your backyard. These are things that when you drive along the highway, I can vouch for one of them. One of them is a tree, which anybody who lives in St. Charles County will know this story because of the fact.
Okay, so is it like a gumball tree?
No, the
gum tree, honeysuckle.
Bradford pear.
Bradford pear, yeah.
The Bradford pear.
What are the others, Brad?
The Bradford pear is notorious because of the fact that what happens is the trunk grows out of the ground, and then it splits into all these little trunks. And every time there's a big wind that happens, like you can go by, like there's certain subdivisions in St. Charles County that had Bradford pears planted all over the place. Try saying that 10 times fast. Anyway, if you get a big wind, bunk, one of the limbs just gets ripped right out of the trunk. Okay, Bradford pear, the burning bush. How about that one?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, let me see. And there also, here, let me think. There's the Bradford pear, the burning bush, one I've never heard of, the Callery pear, Callery, Callery pear, burning bush, the winter creeper. That sounds like somebody who's on at night after
outside
midnight.
Your house, yeah.
Or on a radio station in the winter after midnight. I'm the winter creeper. And we talked about the Japanese honeysuckle. These are the things that have taken over the interstate, all up and down the interstate. They are everywhere.
The Japanese honeysuckle?
Yeah, everywhere. I mean,
I'm Googling it right now to see if I see what it looks like.
Me,
oh God, yeah.
I fight with honeysuckle all the time. I mean, honeysuckle is nasty stuff because
I have it in my backyard, Brad.
Right, and if you don't get
actually, I should say, let me interrupt. My neighbor has it, and good old stuff. Johnny Combine's out there in the spring ripping it out.
Okay, and the last one is, I don't know what this is. It's Serica, Sericea, Lespedeza. Lespedza. I don't know what that is. And the bill is Missouri. It's championed by the Missouri Invasive Plant Council. There are more than 5 invasive plants causing issues across Missouri, but the council found these 5 to be the most infamous from the numerous public comments they began collecting in 2020. Bradford pears, I'm telling you, back in the day, in the subdivisions in St. Charles County, every house had a Bradford pear in the front yard. That was what they planted.
Yeah. And to make this a little bit self-glorifying, Brad, I was once interviewed in a Riverfront Times column about kudzu. Kudzu?
Yeah.
Invasive kudzu?
Right.
Because kudzu was growing on electrical lines in the shape of Jesus. And Chad Garrison from the Riverfront Times came to me and said, will Roundup kill kudzu? And I said, absolutely. And Chad's headline was something to the effect of, go ahead and spray Jesus with Roundup.
Nothing like what a great headline, right?
It's fantastic.
Okay, which is the newspaper? Was it the New York Post that used to that still writes all the crazy headlines? You know what I'm saying?
Well, the Daily News is pretty crazy, but the New York Post is the one. I linked to 2 stories from the New York Post today, and sometimes, Brad, they do a better job of speaking in plain language than our liberal media folks here in Missouri.
Really? How's that possible? Okay.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?